Shout out to US ARC and all US ARC members. If you don't know what US ARC is, don't be ashamed. Just go ahead and click the third link in the description below. See what US ARC is all about, okay? You never know when legislations are going to hit your backyard, so that's why it's very important to consider becoming a US ARC member today. These numbers really do matter, and they look at it for consideration when it comes to battling legislation. So first and foremost, thank you, Phil Goss. Thank you to anybody out there who partners up and volunteers with US ARC organization. Thank you for anyone out there who's a US ARC member. And if you can't become a US ARC member today, please talk about it on your platforms. Let your neighbors know, let all your pet stores know what US ARC is here for, and it's here to fight for our animal rights. Thank you to every US ARC member and US ARC supporter out there.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Episode, I don't even put the number on here, dude. We're high. We're up there, like 670 something. Thursday nights belong to the Trap. Another debate is going down. Last debate I had was against my wife. I got smoked. Debate before that one, Patrick Holmes. I got smoked. Coach Rice, probably going to get smoked. But I'm not going to lie, kind of, we're going to get into it tonight. Mainly because I clickbait the shit out of you guys. But anyways, you guys are in for a treat. All right, if this is your first time hanging out, first time watching Trap Talk with MJ, do me a favor, dude. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Select all. You'll be reminded of every podcast released out of the network 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday. You can find a brand new episode all related to reptiles, reptile keeping, reptile breeding, all the glorious stuff in the reptile world, man, brought to you here on the network. And just to remind you guys, you can listen to all these episodes on all major audio platforms. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, any major audio platform, you can listen to all these episodes. Wherever you listen to any of these episodes, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for all the support. Really means a lot. 6 years doing this now. And yeah, we're going strong. We really are. So all because of your guys' support. Thank you so much, man. And listen, if you guys want to support me a little bit further than watching, if you want to get more behind the scenes, you want to get to know me better, warning, by the way, come join the Trap Talk Patreon family. Join the very first, click the very first link in the description below. As soon as you join the Trap Talk Patreon family, you connect to a Discord. It will tap you in with some of the best keepers in the game. Instagram group chat is popping 24/7. So all my trappers, you guys are my heart. Thank you so much for keeping everything entertaining and just, it's a good place to be, man. I love the reptile world, and my Patreon members, you guys are my heart, man. So, but yeah, listen, I'm very excited. You guys know, one of the things about keeping reptiles is we want our reptiles to look good all the time, especially with social media being the way it is. I talk about this all the time on Trap Talk, how the best way to build your resume in the hobby is by showing your animals off, obviously, right? And that happens over time, posting your animals on Instagram. And I'm very proud of my collection. I think anyone should be proud of their collection. I think, it's kind of like how some people say, yeah, like I got the best dog in the world. Well, yeah, you do have the best dog in the world. It's your dog. It's like saying like your kid's number one. Of course, your kid's number one. And I feel like these reptiles, same thing. Like these reptiles that you care for on a day-to-day basis, that are basically therapeutic in a sense. They should be, at least, not to everyone, unfortunately, but this should be a place of like oasis and happiness and like pure bliss. And so there's a lot to give thank-wise to these animals. So when you deal with animals that have stuck sheds, any kind of husbandry issues, not eating, whatever, there's a list of husbandry issues that you could go through and watch your animal go through some sort of declines during these husbandry issues. Some animals, some reptiles, it's not that big of a deal. Like we all know, it's very common for ball pythons to have stuck sheds, right? Not a shocker. But when you work with animals that are not as worked with, especially ones that aren't having, the numbers aren't behind the success with breeding, you start to think, well, what's going on? Like, what can make this animal unhappy? A lot of the animals we're going to be talking about tonight, emerald tree boas, green tree pythons, Like humidity really matters to these species. Matters to the point where, okay, yeah, like I said, you may have no issues keeping them the way you're keeping them, other than the stuck sheds, which I mind you, dude, it gets old soaking snakes. Like it's fucking gets old. It really does. Okay. And it's also very time consuming. I don't want to say it's stressful, but also you got to think maybe at times snakes not trying to be in a tub full of water, you know? So if I could do less soakings, if I could do less having to stress about a shed, dude, I'm all for it. And I got to think, man, if there is a perfect way to keep reptiles, it's never having to deal with stuck sheds. I'm telling you right now, it's a fucking beautiful place. I can't tell you I've not had a stuck shed in so long, but dude, it's kind of a rare incident now when I get a stuck shed. The last stuck shed I dealt with was a female behind me that has a tumor. There's just something weird going on with her. And so I feel like and I'll talk to Coach Rice about this tonight, but I feel like sometimes no matter how good your humidity is or whatever, if there's something going on with that snake, you could also get a bad shed. But bad sheds should not be a common thing. I think they could happen, but if it's something where it's like, oh, great, another bad shed, well, there's an issue there, okay? So you guys are definitely like, this is going to be a fucking informational packed episode on the right husbandry for majority of these species. Again, ball pythons, and you know, when it comes to thinking of a real easy species that you could basically neglect and still breed and have no issues, ball python's the first snake that comes to mind. And I know there's other ones out there that aren't as easy. I'm sorry, that aren't as hard to keep and whatnot. But at the end of the day, man, like if you're really in the reptile hobby, you want to know what's the best way to keep with what you're keeping, right? So, but yeah, man, it's gonna go down. Hydration, humidity, so much to cover on tonight's episode. And I want to say thank you to Coach Rice for taking the time for doing this debates, because in a sense, there's really no debates. Coach Rice changed my whole game with husbandry. He really did. And it was fucking, I've already given him flowers before. I'll give him more flowers tonight. But I still spray, and we're going to talk about why I still spray and why I feel like spraying is important still. And then we'll have that banter with Coach Rice. So you guys are in for a treat, man. Do you want to say before we get tonight's, by the way, who's here tonight, man? Shout out to anyone who's tapped in tonight. The homegirl Amanda. How you doing, Amanda? Thanks for being here. Trap Talk Patreon member, my homeboy Lucid Arboreals from Sweden, or no, from Switzerland. Yeah, my boy from Switzerland. What's going on, buddy? Thanks for tapping in. Naomi Tony from Revision Reptiles tapping in. Go US Art. Appreciate you. Salamander, what's up, buddy? Thanks for tapping in. The homie Woodstock. I have 5 green tree pythons, 10 emeralds, and haven't sprayed in a year and a half. No problems at all. Well, there you go. Coach Rice definitely paid you to say that. All right, here we go. Patrick Holmes in the building. My guy Patrick, another great mentor of mine. Patrick for sure is team spraying all day, every day. And you know, one thing I love about Patrick is even to this day, with the amount of years that this guy has under his belt, just like with obsessing over reptiles and studying them, he's still open to learn new things. But spraying is something you're not going to ever get this guy to stop doing. So appreciate you, Patrick, for tapping in. What's up, homie? The homie Justin tapping in. Ozark Mountain Morphs, Trap Talk Patreon member. Big Mike in the building. OG Trap Talk Patreon was my dog. Thanks for tapping in, buddy. But yeah, you guys are on for a treat. Listen, at the end of the day, this is all about learning. This is about having fun. And you guys are all in for all of that stuff. So without further ado, I want to get this episode going. Show on the road. This debate. That's it. Coach Rice versus MJ. Team No Spray versus Spray. Which one are you? Drop a comment. Let's get this shit rocking. Choo!
Good.
You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasts?
Yes.
Man.
Only Trap Talk. Exclusive.
Yes.
Exclusive. Oh.
So stop calling us.
Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the crop, God, love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with everybody, we do it. Everybody, we do it.
And we're live.
Just had to do some dumbass.
Let me know when you're done.
All right. It didn't. I didn't listen to this video before. It's an ASMR video of spray bottles on YouTube. God damn it! It wasn't as good as I hoped it would be.
I thought it was your girl spraying you. Literally, I thought she was spraying your umbrella.
No, I was gonna do that, but it didn't work out. Anyways,
Wow.
all right, enough of that horse shit. You didn't follow through, man. You were supposed to have the goggles and shit, and I'm cussing too much at the intro here. Sorry about that.
You're good, dude. What's
Doesn't
up?
that demonetize or something?
No, you're good. You can't F-bombs. You can't say you can't say cuss words in the first 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. I couldn't. I thought it was 10 for some reason.
Not even a
but-
big deal. What's up,
All right,
buddy?
so what's up? Not much, man.
Thanks for
Doing
being
good,
here.
doing good. Yeah, just been having fun with the little meme war we got going.
Yeah, because listen, okay, kind of going back to you want your animals to always look good.
Yeah.
When you think you found the right way to keep your reptile, and then you found out, and it turns out that's not the right way, egos always play a part, you know?
Yeah, definitely, of course.
And that's definitely what it was for me in the beginning when you were trying to what was it, dude? Let me kind of take this back. So when I first started keeping chondros, and I was mainly ball python heavy, I forget who it was at the time, but it was another ball python breeder, and he watched a lot of NPR, Morelia Python Radio. And I forget what episode it was, but they said on that episode how it's not necessary to spray your snakes. If anything, you shouldn't spray your snakes because how they get hydration in the wild and how technically they avoid it in the wild. And that's also true. When do you ever see a snake perched in the fucking middle of the goddamn, monsoon or storm and just getting drenched on?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I make a lot of the jokes and stuff is because the spray Illuminati stuff has obviously gotten absurdly out of control, but it's just fun. But the whole concept of it is just, there's it all kind of originated from a few particular people a few years ago, but the idea that the animals absolutely love getting blasted with raindrops, it just, to me, conflicts with what I've always seen with animals in general. I don't know, whenever it rains here, and just about any time it rains, the animals all hide. They're not frolicking, they're hiding, and it's after the rain that they come out and do stuff. And so I make a lot of little jokes about that kind of stuff. I'm not completely anti-spray. I blame you for that, for me getting that kind of view that people have of it. I'm not completely against it. I don't particularly do it. But
understand, I also do that to myself. People think I really hate yellow neonates. They think,
it's just.
Actually, I had somebody ask me, "Will you take $250 for a yellow?" Dude, I don't think yellow are valued. It's not that I don't think I could sell one.
I know.
I like having fun, and I really think it's just a cool thing to do to give some back to people who've been a fucking part of your support system for years now.
No, I thought that was cool. And that's another one that's just a fun, it's just become a fun thing. It's a goofy thing. People have their preferences, and so you have some fun, joking around about it.
This should always be fun, right?
Yeah.
Isn't okay, keeping reptiles fun, right? But then learning learning was never fun to me until I got into the reptile world. Then I was oh wow, because obviously whatever you learn helps your collection, helps your breeding. And listen, guys, and I want to remind everyone out there, I know not everyone's in this for breeding, but this podcast is a breeding heavy podcast. That's what I'm about. And everything I talk about is so I could become a better breeder, but also keeper, right? Because I was a keeper before I was a breeder.
And they go hand in hand. And I think too often that there's a thing that happens nowadays, and I kind of understand where it comes from, but there's a bit of it's almost like breeder's a bad word to a certain degree with some people, in more of the kind of naturalistic circles. And I think that I'd like to see that kind of shit stop, because it's hypocritical in a lot of ways, and B, it's the people that have bred snakes and have been figuring these things out for years, they're doing good work. They may not be doing exactly the way that certain people want to keep them, or feel that the animals absolutely have to have a certain, setup or whatever. But there's not very many people, I think, in my opinion anyways, that are really, breeders that are doing just awful shit. And it's just, I think that the kind of the dogging it, and the idea that everybody that's keeping and breeding, isn't doing things right, I think that's part of why I make jokes and shit that I do, just to push back against some of that a little bit too, because it gets really, I don't know, it gets a lot of passive aggressive stuff and those circles get said. A whole lot of passive aggressive stuff gets said.
Because what's happening here, Chris, is okay. You have like you said. I don't think anyone is like losing animals due to like maybe a drier room or not having your husbandry on point. But at the end of the day, like we all know, there's people dealing with it. They, you know, and even bigger OG breeders who've been around, I've been to their collections. I've seen firsthand that animal has a whole fucking shed on its face. Like it's they're clearly that not all of them, but that one has stuck shed.
Sure.
I know if you have so many animals and that humidity isn't where it needs to be, you're gonna deal with stuck sheds on a normal basis. It's just gonna happen. And that's what people don't want to hear. They don't want to, because they don't want to be like, oh, is he talking about me? When we kind of, not just you, we're talking to a bunch of people, even like my old version of myself that had like, dude, remember I was talking about before we went live? Dealing with stuck sheds suck because you don't, like I have OCD. It's kind of like walking by your cage, you notice there's shit on the glass. You don't just go about your day. You're going to fucking take care of that shit real quick because you don't want your room to look like that. That's at least that's how I am. But also like, you know, there's just, I can't stand to look at stuck shed on a snake. I really, especially if it's something that's displayed, or even in general, even if it's not displayed, I don't like seeing stuck shed. So I immediately address it. You know what I mean? And
going beyond even just that, it's like you know, it's got to be uncomfortable for the animals. And for me, the thing that bothers me about it is that it's a representation. It's an indicator, and it's not to say like, oh, if you have a stuck shed ever, that you're a terrible keeper or whatever. I'm not saying that. But when you have chronic stuck shed like this, especially if it's a lot of different snakes, you know, you got to stop and try to address it. And so one of the things that people throw at me a lot all the time, and man, this week has been big time. People always say, well, you're in Florida, so you could just, you know, you don't have to do it. And it's like, nah, I don't buy that, right? I don't buy that excuse anymore. And the reason is that, A, think about some of the greats that are doing good work with some of these species that we're talking about, and they're not in Florida, and they figured it out, and they're making it work, and they're not huge sprayers. Now, some of them still spray sometimes, and that's fine. I'm not here to say, like, oh, you shouldn't ever spray your snakes in any situation. Anything that I make that suggests that is a joke, and I would hope that kind of stuff is pretty obvious by now that it is a joke. But it's basically like, you know, the idea that everybody's room is like different enough, and so it's just kind of like, okay, well, that's an excuse to not address the baseline humidity, really just becomes an excuse at some point. And I would use the parallel, like, look at heating with reptiles, right? So we all live in different rooms. We all have different conditions. Nobody's making an argument like, well, it's cold here, so I just can't really heat them. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put a 5,000 watt heat bulb and have it flick on for 15 seconds every few hours. And that'll do it. You know what I mean? Nobody's making that kind of an argument. So like you have to figure out for your room what's a good way to address that issue and how to stabilize the humidity. And this is where I will say, with spraying, the main issue that I have and that I joke about with it, but I also am trying to educate people on it, is that in a lot of times it's pretty inefficient. And one of the arguments that I get a lot, and I had a couple conversations at Daytona about this, I'll get people to message me or, you know, talk to me about emeralds in particular most of the time. And the thing I hear a lot is like, well, I spray and it works for me. But I always am thinking in my head, I'm like, well, is it really? Yeah, because if you're coming to me with issues that are related to hydration and humidity, it's not working for you.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's the big thing, is it's like if you're having some of these issues and this is the approach you're doing and you keep doing it over and over again and these issues aren't really resolving, then you got to figure out a different approach to this. You can maybe still spray, but if that approach that you're doing is resulting in chronic dehydration, then you need to figure out what else you can do to address that. And there's a number of more efficient ways to do this.
Well, Chris, let's think of this. What's the quickest and fastest way to deal with something that's dried out? You spray it. That's what you do at that time to hurry up and address the issue.
Yeah, it's like a short-term way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Which isn't sustainable because that is going to dry out immediately, and it's not something that's consistent. People think that these snakes only need that humidity spike or whatever for that one little 30 minutes. They need it at an average, like good, like percentage. I feel like on a daily basis, even nighttime. I don't think it should ever drop below 60. I really don't.
No, I'm saying, I think if any, honestly, I mean, in an ideal situation, it's hard to pull off in captivity because of the nature of airflow.
And that's another. Okay, thank you. That's another thing that people get on their head about, because the majority of people don't have a reptile room, like a dedicated room. It's in their. They're either in their living room, they're in their office, in a living space where their AC's on, and so that cage is doing a lot more work to stay warm than typically what our cages are doing. Like we're ambient, and so if people can't do an ambient system, that's when I feel like they're like, if they can't control the humidity ambient in their room because where they live, and they can't control the temperatures, and they're relying on dumping water on the ground and spraying and having that panel on. What was my issue? Remember I was telling you with my female, I'm like, dude, the humidity says 65, 70, and she still had a stuck shed. Why was that, Chris?
Just get dried out from that panel.
They don't leave the panel if they, and that was also a temperature thing that I figured out. Remember, like obviously we addressed it. Like my whole basking wasn't on point. But let's think about how many people have chondros that just don't leave the basking. They're underneath there all the time.
Well, that's one of those things. And again, this, it's another kind of, heated topic that people get upset about, but that gets into the whole issue of how to heat them and how to, achieve the proper kind of ambient warmth that you need for the animals and their basking. Because I would argue, based on what I've seen here, and again, try to, for people that get really, irritated with me or upset or whatever, like try to remember, like a lot of this stuff I'm speaking from experience on this. I've been down this road. I've done some of these things too. And I know, like I had, cages that with heat panels in them, and I was getting, problems with stuck shed, and I was getting problems with overheating. It's really the last few years with me with chondros, I've had issues with heating them properly, where I've tried different things and it just didn't freaking work right. They were still getting too hot and too dry in some situations, mostly just getting too hot when they had eggs. And so you have to think about how those things are working. And if you have an animal that's constantly trying to, sit under the heat panel, that to me should be an indicator of, okay, the baseline ambient temperature for this animal is not high enough. Not that it needs to be high 24 hours a day.
Right, exactly.
It's that the baseline ambient temperature is not quite warm enough. And that may be down to individual animals, probably have certain preferences. But I think overall, these animals in the wild are not they don't have this weird little setup that we do where we give them, a box with a very small gradient. They're subjected, I think anyways, my opinion, that they're spending, and again, to clarify, we're speaking primarily on chondros and emeralds here. They're sitting on a perch in the wild, and they're basically subjected to the fluctuations of the ambient temperature wherever they're at. And most of the time, they're probably sitting in one spot. They may shift around a little bit, but I don't personally believe these animals are like on the move, choosing a different temperature every 5 minutes to stay perfect.
They're trying to find the safest place possible, and they don't want to
find it. Exactly. They find a secure, safe spot. They sit there, and they tolerate and basically adapt to that fluctuating ambient warmth, and that's going to slowly ramp up in the morning and then slowly ramp down at night.
Right.
But it gets pretty warm, at least relatively warm, wherever they're at. I don't personally.
Go ahead.
Ambient warmth. Chondros seem a little cooler, and they seem to prefer a little cooler overall, I think, compared to the emeralds. But I think sometimes what we're trying to do in captivity with them, it's hard to really give them what they need. And I get it. Everybody's rooms are different, so there's different challenges there. But with something like temperature, like when you have a setup for, say, an emerald, and the cool end is like 70 during the day or 72, to me that's unnatural. That's not, I don't think that they're finding little microclimates in their habitat. I don't think they could find a pocket that's like 70 degrees when it's 95 ambient.
Where would the coldest place be? It would be on the floor. Like that would be like
it would be low, and it would be under shade. And they do, they're in the canopy, and I don't think that they're crazy hot all day. But like the ambient warmth in these places is getting pretty high, and they're and that's under the shade. Yeah. It's even hotter if they're in direct sunlight, of course, but they're spending most of that time under the shade. And I think that's all these things play into there's of course the relation with how they're hydrated and how the humidity works, and so you have to kind of fine tune all these things.
Well, okay,
in order to get it to work.
We talk about the gradient between temperatures that you could get away with, like, and I think there's like without including any breeding, just keeping. There's an easy number you could stick to range wise and be perfectly okay with it.
Sure.
But that's the same with humidity. Like people think they could just be 80, 90 humidity for like 2 hours, and then by the time they wake up the next morning, it's 17, it's 20. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
they would never in a million years experience that in the wild.
Yes,
and I know that what we're doing isn't the wild, but they're evolved for, living in the wild, and so they're not going to adapt that easily to drastic shifts like that. I don't think, anyways. Some species, of course, are more tolerant than others, and they can tolerate a wide range. But I think with the main species we're talking about, with chondros and emeralds, they really, anything below 60 or 70% humidity, I think it's too dry for them. And I think they should be that high or higher at all times.
Yes, I agree. And I really challenge anyone to do this and tell me what happens to your collection. Let me know the next stuck shed you get if you keep your ambient humidity in the 60s or higher. I'm telling you right now, dude.
It starts to go away.
It all goes away, man. And I almost got to the point where I almost accepted, like, this is what you have to deal with. And I think that's what a lot of other people do too, man. They just accept that you're going to get a stuck shed from time to time, and that's fine. Like if you're willing to be okay with that, okay, but you don't have to. And I feel like this is where you helped me out a lot, Coach, is where you told me if you just work a little bit harder, giving them humidity without doing the shortcut route, you're going to see the benefit to it. And mind you, really what it came down to, because I created less ventilation in the boxes, which helped, but I'm like, do I really want less ventilation? Because ventilation is important. Like that airflow, it's tricky, right? Like,
it's challenging.
And I think I had 10 slots on the back of these focus cubes. I know I didn't need fucking 10. So but I was able to at least I went back there and taped up maybe 2 on each. So maybe they had 8 slots instead of 10, but it wasn't that crazy. What really changed everything for me, bro, was the humidity, the ambient humidity in the actual room.
That's a big one if you can pull that off. Yeah,
it's not easy. I got 2
and that's one of the hardest ones to do, of course, because especially if you don't have a dedicated room, you know what I mean? So and I get that. But again, it's like, I think the thing is like, if I had, and I don't, have like a big mission statement with this stuff, I guess, but if I did, it would essentially just be like, you could spray or not, but I think the animal should be kept in a way, not just for your own sake, but also for their sake in particular. They should be kept in a way to where if you don't spray them for a couple of days in a row, they should still be perfectly fine. Yeah. And I think that a lot of times this is really what we're talking about here, is like, if your snakes can't go a few hours without getting sprayed, if they're drying out rapidly, you're not addressing the core hydration of them. If they can't take a shit without being forced into a rain chamber, they can't have a shed without being forced into a rain chamber, their core hydration is not being met. Period.
That's another thing.
It's the proof is right there with the snake's behavior. So you have to just figure it out rather than get salty about it. You got to figure out, like, all right, well, what can I do that's a little different, and to create basically some form of stable, slow evaporation, ideally coming from the floor of the cage in some way, and create that stable, baseline humidity, so that then if you want to boost it with spraying, go ahead. They'll probably enjoy a little bit of a boost there, especially at night, since that's when they would get it the most. But again, it's like, this thing where if you're having chronic dry sheds like this, and and it's just kind of being tossed out as like, well, screw all you Florida keepers and your perfect humidity. It's like, well, maybe try to figure out something else. And on that too, like, I've had bad sheds in the past when I'm in Florida, so like it doesn't really add up. Like, I had that until I started doing it.
Living in Florida doesn't mean you can't have bad husbandry. Like, I don't
know. That's a myth. That's totally a myth. It's like you can still have problems with heat and humidity. Like, we are closer for sure. We're well, not all the state, even the northern part is not really like that, but we definitely have an advantage of being closer, like, to the native, the natural habitat of these species, but it's not exactly like it. And there's more fluctuation than I think they would experience there, and I don't think our humidity overall is even as high. But again, but that's talking about outdoors. If they're kept properly outdoors, I've done that. If they're kept properly outdoors, they can thrive, of course, pretty easily. But indoors presents other challenges. I see Patrick Sprazy is in the he's in the comments here. He says puppy pads do precisely what Chris just said. Yeah, exactly. Puppy pads, just saturating a puppy pad works. I know there's some debate about that. That's an issue I'll be thinking about. But here's an example of some of the things to think about with a puppy pad, right? So I use puppy pads currently. I may change, but I've been using them for years in my adult cages for both species.
Yeah.
And at the old house, because we just moved, this is a new place. So at the old house in my rooms, the humidity in the rooms would rarely go above 50%. Sometimes it'd be 60, but most of the time it's like 40, 50%. And so for the adults, I was mostly saturating those pads. Like I would just every couple of days, like just dump a little bit of water on there, right? And that was necessary. And so when we moved to this new room, I just started doing the same thing, and it was too much. Now I'm just like, shit, this room is getting too humid, and their cages it's just going to be too much to do that. So now I don't dump water on those pads at all because I don't need to. And the thing is just paying attention. It's one of these things that we all can kind of fall into this trap as keepers, as breeders, as people, whatever. Like, always try to be questioning what you're doing and if it actually makes sense, instead of just replicating like
what you heard.
Just doing it because it's what other people have done. Like, I know,
which majority of people do shit lazy. Like, that's the truth. Like, what people will which is more like that's working because they're not going further on what to figure out what the real issue is. They think dumping water on the fucking floor and just spraying a shit ton of water on the snake is the solution, but it's not. It's a temporary, like, fraudulent solution,
Yeah, it tends to create, and I think in one of the people that I remember mentioning this, because I want to try to give props to when I started making these changes. So a couple of the key people that I remember, obviously Ed is somebody who Ed still sprays, but Ed doesn't do it in a way to where like it's like a primary method of providing the humidity and hydration. I don't know how often he sprays, if it's once a week or twice a week, but it seems to me like he does it just as like a little boost in hydration and humidity here and there, and probably more so just as like a form of enrichment and stimulation for them, which obviously, you can't really question or fuck with Ed at all on any of this stuff.
Okay, well, there's times where no matter what's happening, that snake needs a shit sometimes. And so,
sure.
And we all know that's kind of what gets that snake to shit, is when you just put him in something like a sprayed, what do they call it? What's the little system that they call the fucking
like a rain chamber?
Rain chamber, yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
Rain chamber, which, dude, rain chambers on a regular basis, not okay. Like, a rain chamber should not be a regular practice thing for your animal to go take a shit in. That is not natural.
So let's get into this. Is where I think would be interesting, right? Because a lot of times this kind of topic, we don't go into detail enough there. So I would like to. I've got some notes if I can remember them. They're a little fucking messy here. But so like on something like that, on the topic of like the rain chambers and doing that, like, I guess my issue with it is not so much like if somebody's doing that for stimulation and for like a form of enrichment. I don't really think it's a bad thing. I mean, obviously these snakes do get rained on in the wild. There's no question about that. I don't really think that these animals are seeking it out. I don't think that they're thrilled with it. I think you look at most animals in the wild, when it rains, they're not frolicking. They're trying to hide. They're trying to get away from it. And then the activity comes after the rain. And one of the things that I've observed here that's been interesting, and I think a lot of people, could do themselves a favor by experimenting with something like this, even if you want to just try it with one animal, just to see, or a couple animals, the stimulating them with the rain, it's one way to do it. But like, what I see here and have seen for years is that when you get a temperature drop at night, when you get a rainstorm that comes through, you get the air pressure changes, you get the humidity changes, you get all these changes that take place. Those animals are activated by that, not the water droplets. The water droplets are like a secondary, I think, inconsequential thing for them. They will go to the bathroom when you do that, but they'll also do it if you just take them out and hold them for a minute. And they'll also do it if you just allow the air pressure change, you know, to be felt by them and just allow them to be active at night. And that another factor in there is not stuffing them with too many meals. So all this stuff plays in there. But again, with to kind of get back on the topic of the rain chamber stuff, I think that when you create a reliance on that, when you create a situation where this animal basically becomes kind of trained to only be able to drink or only defecate by methods like that, I think it's setting up a situation it becomes difficult to maintain, especially if you have a number of animals. The more animals that you have like that, the harder it becomes to actually keep up with a schedule like that. It's a good way to set yourself up to get overwhelmed and burned out trying to keep up with doing something like that.
Oh yeah.
And I think if you instead take the approach of, all right, well, let's meet this animal's core hydration and humidity needs in a stable manner, in a way that it's gonna, you know, be able to perform its natural functions without intervention, without any kind of intervention whatsoever. That creates a healthy animal that you can then choose whether you do it or not. And if you go away for a few days and the animal doesn't go into a rain chamber, it's not going to start drying out and get dehydrated. It's not going to have difficulty, going to the bathroom. And to me, that's actually a more natural way to approach it, because I don't believe that these animals in the wild, like I used to kind of buy into the idea that like, oh, they're waiting around for the rain to defecate. I don't really think that makes sense. The more, again, questioning some of these things, it's like, does that really make sense? Well, I don't think so. If they're getting, because think about it, the argument is that they're getting rained on 24 hours a day, in their natural habitat, so that's why it's so natural. But it's like, okay, well then they wouldn't need to wait around for a rainstorm if that's happening. And then
but mind you, like, how many times are they really probably getting backed up in the fucking wild? I mean, they're not.
I don't think they probably hardly ever, because
they're not getting fed the way that we're feeding them here.
Yeah. Well, they're not getting fed the way we feed them, and they're also just they're in proper humidity all the time. So there's not, whether it's and again, this is like kind of an interesting topic, like the issue with humidity and whether that's how they're getting hydrated or not. When Dave Kaufman and Amy Benzie went to Suriname, I think it was last year or maybe earlier this year, I can't remember, the period of time that they went, it was during a drought. So it was basically didn't rain for like a month.
Yeah.
But every single emerald that they were finding looked perfectly hydrated.
Yeah.
So what are they doing during this time? I think they're getting it primarily through the air. Yeah, they're getting it from dew in the morning. They're getting it from breathing that humid air, because even during a drought, it's only 60 to 70%. Even during a drought, it's still 60 to 70% humidity.
Right. And we're not considering the morning mist, like when we all know on hot days, because right now, like I told you earlier, Chris, like we're getting a lot of hot days here in San Diego.
Yeah.
So our mornings are extra foggy right now. Like you could tell like a hot day's brewing up,
Yeah.
And I feel like that's another huge thing that crossed my, obviously connected dots in my head that you mentioned, was like, that's how majority of hydration is going into these arboreal snakes that are tucked in the trees, and they're staying away from, like, they're not all of them are hanging over rivers drinking water. You know what I'm saying?
No, and I think so. I certainly don't know for sure that they're getting all their hydration that way. I don't think they would get all of it. I think that they're getting a more significant portion of it than we think. And at the very least, it's helping to prevent them from drying out, during times of difficulty finding water, which I don't really think that they do in the habitats that they're in. They're going to find water basically everywhere in all sorts of forms. They're going to find it, in little nooks and crannies and plants and logs and trees and anywhere they are, right below them.
And the animals they eat too.
In the animals they eat, of course. And then, they're hang on, what's he here? They're likely eating less frequently during the dry season, which relates to water conservation. Yeah, that might have something there too. Is but I guess to talk about, I remember when it was a few episodes back. At some point, we had a discussion about spraying and hydration through the air, whether this was what the animals were doing. And I know Patrick and Brian were you know, going back and forth on this with me about it. And I remember one of the things Patrick was saying was that he believed that, like, you know, they're basically losing more water vapor by exhaling during the winter, during cooler months. You know, it's drier, so they're exhaling more. But I feel like, and Patrick can correct me if I'm misquoting here, but I think that his argument was that, well, the reason they're drying out more that way is that, you know, drier air makes you exhale more, or like you're losing more that way. But
you're grasping more, yeah.
I don't really agree with that. I think that what it is that when the air is drier, the reason why they develop those issues is because the intake isn't happening. You know, the air's not humid enough, so they're not getting the same level of water intake, and that's why they're drying out, because they wouldn't basically experience this in their natural habitat. You know, if a drought in their natural habitat is 60 to 70%, half or more of us keeping these animals are basically keeping them year round in below drought like conditions for where they come from.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. So, you know, again, you know, I can't say for sure that they're absolutely getting a huge portion of their hydration through the air the particles of water in the air, but to me it makes perfect sense. It's like, okay, well, if I can keep them and raise them from hatchlings, from babies, and this is chondros and emeralds, and we'll get into the chondros in a little bit.
Yeah.
If I can do this by just providing fresh, clean water regularly and keeping that humidity stable, you know, high and stable all the time, you know, I don't see them guzzling like crazy. And what's interesting, if anything, it almost seems like you see them drink less when they're kept in stable, high humidity. So maybe the intake is coming in through the air, like we're finding out. Like, we do this, we have this, and supposedly all vertebrates do this. So that's my kind of thought process on it. Again, I could be wrong. I'm sure as hell not a scientist. But to me, that makes sense. And you know, even some of the other arguments for the rain and the spraying and all this, I know another one that I've heard people say a lot is like, well, you know, they collect the water on their coils, like they're evolved to collect the water on their coils and then drink, you know, from that. It's like, okay, that's probably, yeah, obviously another way they can get it, but what's the core activity that's happening there? They're drinking a lot of water. It's not that they're not lapping little tiny, you know, one by one tiny little droplets off of walls and stuff. They might be collecting a significant puddle of water and then drinking as much as they want from that. And so I think, you know, that's I guess where I come from with all this thought process on why large water bowls, you know, multiple water bowls. I don't really do elevated bowls, but I think that's probably another good thing that you could do that would help.
I think the more like availability you have for them to drink, the better. Like, even though
of course,
it is a lot of work. Like, I have one emerald cage that has like 3 elevated dishes, one big on the floor, and trust me, the whole water changing gets old when it's
sure
that many. But dude, I don't need to spray her once. Like, she's because I don't know if I told you this, Chris, but I'm splitting up my room. Like, the emeralds are gonna go on that side now.
I remember you saying that. Yeah, did you already do it, or you're still?
I'm waiting on cages. I'm waiting on cages, and I already have one emerald over there now. And like, dude, I hate to say it, but she's almost neglected because she's like in that corner, and I'm always over here. And like, I give her water changes and shit, but I completely don't spray her. But she shits, she sheds, like she's fucking just doing her thing over there.
Once you saw how it worked. Once you fix that stable humidity.
And it's a lot more drier on that side too. Like, just because that corner where that's at, it's more like 50s over there versus the 60, 70. But the way I have it in that 3x2x2, it works, dude. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just
I'll sit here and ramble if you need to cut me off. Don't worry about it. I'll ramble and so absolutely have no problem with that.
No, yeah. So, but okay, now, you know, I did mention before, and you know what's crazy, Chris, is like a lot of this whole humidity topic doesn't really passionately hit people until they keep a species where it really matters. And I feel like emeralds is a superior species where humidity matters so fucking much. And you'll find out not only with the keeping but breeding, right? And man, I said, I saw night and day behaviors from the litter I got this year compared to my disaster last year, which could only make me think the way I finally figured out the humidity or the temperature as well.
That both of those factor in and balancing it out, right? And that's kind of what the goal is. And like, that's where I'll agree with people that everybody's room, everybody's, really even down to individual enclosures within a room, they're all a little different. So like, you may have a stack of cages where the middle one's fine, the top one's a little too dry, the bottom one's too humid, all sorts of stuff like that. And so I think just looking at those cues and making adjustments, but I think the core kind of thing to keep in mind there is just like, they do need, I think, and I think the evidence is pretty overwhelming, that they need a pretty high baseline humidity level.
Yes.
And if you're not doing that right, that you're going to get problems from that one way or another. They may not be major problems. And again, I'm not trying to dog people and be like, oh, you're all horrible keepers if you've got a little problem here and there. It's not about that. I make jokes, and I posted this a few times. Like, when I make the jokes, the spray Illuminati stuff, and all those, silly memes and shit like that, it's really just to try to get people,
gears moving.
give them a laugh, but also try to get the gears turning. And I've been really happy. One of my favorite comments I've got recently was from Glenn McClellan. He was the author of the Complete Retic.
Oh, yeah, Glenn Reptiles, right?
No, not Glenn Reptiles.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name, but he left a nice comment, and he said, like, the memes have got him critically thinking, and got him to, he kind of recognized, like, there's better ways to get the humidity going for his animals than spraying them, and he'll probably hardly ever or never spray the animals again. And my goal is not to like end spraying for all snakes. That's I'm just joking, but it's just trying to take a look at the stuff and recognize, like, okay, well, is this really as effective as I think it is? And the big thing is, like, trying to answer that question. Like I said, I get people all the time that'll send me stuff, or they'll make a comment, sometimes nice, sometimes kind of smart ass, or trying to puff chests and stuff about, like, well, I spray and I don't have problems.
Well, you only give what they're giving you, dude. So if
that's what I'm saying. Like, it all depends on how somebody approaches me. If somebody approaches me and that's the thing. It's like, if you want to take it there, we can take it there, and you're probably not gonna like it. So you might want to think about that. Like,
I can tell, Chris, you're just one of those people where it's really hard to hurt your feelings. Like, it's not that easy.
No, it's not. And I'm not gonna. The other thing is, I'm not gonna back down to shit. Like, I'm not gonna kiss a single ass cheek.
Because, dude, I will say, a lot of people from your realm, and when I say realm, bro, like, you're an OG in a sense, even though you're like, you almost don't come off as one. Like, dude, you've been around, you've been this shit for a while, and a lot of people like you don't like to speak up. Like, they almost just let people fucking just crash and burn. Like look what that is. Almost like the way I have been acting. Like, I've definitely acted like a know-it-all before, and you have helped me out tremendously, bro. Because again, you think you're doing something right, and you get all gun-ho about it, but when you finally something happens, and really what it was that disaster emerald fucking litter. And then my other female who was gravid having stuck shed, I was tired of seeing what was wrong. And so
you got to that point where it's like, all right,
enough is enough. I'm fucking up.
Yeah.
Like, where am I?
What can I do?
And that's
I've had similar situations. It's not, I'm by no fucking means perfect. Like, I've got to switch up the way that I was keeping my chondros. Like, and this is the thing I think we all do. Like, we'll get an idea of how something needs to be done, or we'll get in our we'll get on this thing where it's like, we feel like, okay, the way that we're doing this is the absolute best way to do it, right?
There's no better way.
And or just get really committed. I mean, something I've definitely done in the past is, like, get committed to the idea, like, okay, I've got this kind of concept of how this should work, and then, but if I'm trying and it's not working, and it's over and over again failing. So for me, the biggest one was, like, the way I was trying to do maternal incubation. Yeah. I had success with it once, and I kept getting similar problems over and over again with it, because I had this idea of how I thought it would work in my setups, but I wasn't taking into consideration that the room that I was doing it in fluctuates way too much, both in terms of temperature and humidity, and I wasn't doing a good enough job to fix those problems. And so I kept getting failure after failure. And so this year, when I had two more failures, one failure at maternal incubation, and then another failure with, you know, retained eggs with one of the chondros that Lucy, who's had it before. It's because of mistakes that I made, and so it's like, all right, I got to do this shit different. This is not working. So no matter whether I thought it was supposed to work or not, the reality is, you know, the evidence is showing me this isn't working. So I got to switch stuff up a little bit there.
Yeah, and again, it's hard to look in the mirror and say, dude, it's you. It's not the fucking like. It's not
because that sucks to do. Yeah, especially when again, you know, you have an idea of how something's supposed to work, and you want it to, and you try it and it doesn't, and it sucks when it doesn't work. Especially if you've been, you know, especially if you put that time into it and you really, you know, expected a good result and it just doesn't fucking work. So but as long as you're learning from it, I mean, that's fine. You know, like that's what this is. Like that's a nonstop process. I'll be fucking things up forever.
Well, you know what?
Something's gonna go wrong every year, you know, for the whole time I continue to do this.
Well, I thought the awesome thing about what you were able to teach me, like I was able to teach people who even mentor me, like what I learned, which they've done, and it's helping them out. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's crazy is like when you're like whatever it is that you thought you were being taught, there's actually a better way that you could go back and tell that mentor, dude, try it this way, and it actually helps the both of you out. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it's all about, dude. Like it's all about like what we can do better. And what I mean by better is like if you see stuck sheds on a regular basis, if you see your snake is constantly backed up, it's not shitting. That's an address, like that's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and if you want to sit here and say that you're doing it the right way and you're fucking Mr. fucking I'm on this pedestal keeper, dude, not really. If you have regular stuck sheds and you have to take your snake outside or in a range chamber to shit on a regular basis.
Yeah, it just means, and again, it's, you know, I'm not trying to say never do those things. Although we'll talk about some of the jokes I've made with the blasting snakes with the high pressure stuff.
Dude. Okay,
I've seen some shit where it's just like, okay, that's dude, that is not cool. Like that animal hates that.
No, I tried. Okay, this morning, and I was later on. I remember I told them like I'm gonna get the promos rolling here soon. I had something in mind where I was gonna do like I had basically it's fucked up, but I had my phone on the Emerald.
That'll be good.
I had my phone on the Emerald, and it's just a beautiful shot of my Emerald. She's sitting there. I'm like, all right, guys, make sure you tune in. Blah blah blah. I don't even know what I said, but I fucking hit the sprayer, and it just like you could just see the snake go like almost so scared. I'm like, I can't post that. I'm like,
I know. Yeah, I know what you mean. I've
like
thought
an
about
asshole for doing that. I'm like, you're an asshole, dude. Like,
but I get it. And again, like it's not, you know, if the snake takes a little bit of an uncomfortable mist to the face briefly, it's not like you're killing it or anything. But you're doing certain things I think are chronically stressful, and certain stuff I've seen with spraying and some of the kind of like particularly shower rain chamber behavior I've seen people do, and like people will rally around it like, oh, this is great, the snake loves it, and it's like, use your eyes. That snake is trying its hardest to get away from that because it sucks, because you're holding it awkwardly and you're shooting it in the goddamn face with high pressure water. It doesn't like this. So stop doing that. Like, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't want to, I've seen posts. There was one I'm thinking of in particular where I saw somebody do that, and it was like, I know they meant well. So I didn't, I knew that if I opened my mouth, it was not going to go well. So I just let it be. But like, it's like they literally take it out, grab it like hawk style with one hand, and they're holding this adult basin with one hand like this, and basically just like, and the snake's going, it's trying to get away, clearly trying to get away, clearly doesn't like it, but it's like they're saying it loves it, and people are commenting, amazing, and it loves it, and it's like, no, it does not. Look at the animal's behavior. It doesn't like that. It's stressing it out, and if you're doing this regularly, you're creating chronic stress for that animal.
And okay, then you gotta think about it like this, okay? The whole stimulation thing with the rain chamber. Dude, I'm realizing when these things are stressed out, they shit. Like if you hold them, if you hold them and you put them in a position like the babies, and I'm learning this from the babies. Like I get them to move, and they're snapping at me, and once I get them to move, dude, they're shitting out urates. Like you could see them trying to shit. And that has to do with stress. You would think like they're kind of like, scared. Oh my god, they're scared. So I'm like, how is that really fucking enrichment? Scaring the shit, literally scaring the shit out of something.
I know we made the joke about that before.
You're
like
scaring the shit out of them. Like,
I'll clarify. Not all the time. Not all the time. Right. So there's differences in how this is done, and like it just depends. Right. Yeah. So
sure.
In certain instances, I think the animals are literally getting the shit scared out of them. Like that's literally what's happening. They go from whatever condition they're in their cage, and then they're taken out of it. They're now in what is most likely a very dry room, and so they go through the shift of like a significant unnatural temperature change, significant unnatural humidity drop. Then they're put in like whatever kind of a box, and then they're blasted, and then they take a shit. Well, yeah, I mean they got scared and they took a shit. Like that's what's happening, right? That's not always the case when people are doing rain chambers. That's not always the case when people are spraying them. I'm not trying to say that, so I got to be clear on that. But there's definitely times where that is the case. And when I first started keeping the emeralds and back in 2019. I would take them out back and do the, spray them down with the hose and stuff. And I mean, this is part of what kind of, multiple factors played into this, but eventually what led me to stop spraying altogether was just I started observing the way they were reacting to it. It's like, well, they're trying to get away from it. Some of them not really frantically. They're just they would just instantly try to crawl away from it, And this is even with warm water, like pretty warm water. We're talking summer, summer in Florida. That hose, once you've let it either cool down if it was blasting hot for the first 30 seconds or whatever, like it gets to a decent temperature. I don't know exactly what the temperature is, but it gets to a temperature that the temperature's not shocking them. And they still seem to prefer to get away from it as quickly as possible. And some of them would react and defecate, fairly often. But they would also do that if you just let them crawl around on the ground, because it's just the activity that stimulates it. That's really what is the primary thing. Spraying them and getting them to do it can accelerate that a bit. And again, it's not always the worst thing to do. But I do think the downsides to doing some of that kind of stuff is that you're also kind of training them, right? And we'll get into this about drinking and spraying and how you kind of train the animals to drink.
Right.
If you're training them to rely on a spray bottle, and they're that's basically what they get trained to do, then they can get to I think they get to a position where
rely on it.
They rely on it so heavily that they won't really drink out of water bowls properly, because you're kind of mentally training them to do that. And I remember Steven and I talked about this. He had an experience. I can't remember where it was that he was working at the time. And it was with monitors, and I think it was I don't want to misquote him, but I think there was some monitors that had gotten basically trained to rely on spraying so heavily that they were constantly having dehydration issues if they weren't constantly being sprayed. And I know you're kind of feeling the same way about this, and I definitely have gotten to this point. Like, I want my collection, I want my animals to be able to handle a couple of days of no intervention, and still be perfectly healthy and fine and hydrated and not start shriveling up. And that's where addressing the core hydration and humidity issues get you there. And if you need to spray a little bit to do it, fine. But if you're I would say this: if you're spraying, if it's especially if you're really gung ho about it, like if you're a diehard. If you're a full-fledged card-carrying member of the Spray Illuminati, and you're really diehard about it, and you're still having some of those issues, I would say it's time to go, rethink that a little bit, and question it. At least question it and see if that's what the issue is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is going to be where. Because that's where I do whip out my fucking gold membership to the Spray Illuminati, is when we talk about being.
You're not full blown Spray Illuminati. You're not there. You're Team Spray.
No, I'm like a retired undercover fucking for the Spray. Like, even though I no longer work there and I don't believe what I once did, but like,
are you still feeding information to the agency?
I'm still fucking a crooked cop. Yeah, for sure. But okay, hold on. But this is where I'm gonna get at, because dude, huge. Like I said, this whole episode has been about how you've helped me and how I feel like it's such an awesome feeling to not have to spray as much. Even though I do spray, as I, like Patrick said, if something's in shed, I'll spray. I'm not spraying directly, but I'm spraying the perimeter, like the plants. I spray the surroundings. You know what I mean? And I don't avoid spraying them either. Like, if they get sprayed, they get sprayed. I don't give a shit. Like, but I'm not sitting there going, you know what I mean? Like, I'm getting that area done first and foremost. But the babies, bro, because I want to know who out there that's had 67 fucking baby chondros in a rack system that they were able to establish, provide full sheds without spraying. I want to know who the fuck out there is doing that.
I haven't done those numbers, so I definitely cannot claim those numbers with chondros. I can claim pretty close with the emeralds. And with the chondros, I would say there is a person that did that in the past, and that would be Michael Cermak in Australia. Yeah. But very few people have done it.
He kept them outside though, doesn't?
No. He did keep the adults, but the babies were indoors, from my understanding. And I don't want to misquote him, but from everything I've seen and from the videos that he did and stuff, he was keeping them with no spraying as well. That was one of the first people that got me on that tip, was like, okay, so this dude is, at that time, I know he's retired now, but at the time, this is one of the most. I'm sure he's got to be one of the most successful chondro breeders of all time.
That's like the Rico of Australia, isn't it? Like,
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Chondros and shit.
What was that?
When it comes to chondros and shit, like, isn't that like the fucking?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, he was producing. My understanding is he was producing hundreds per year. So that's like, there's very few people that have done that, and he was doing that without spraying them, and so. That's what got me to start trying it. It's one of the people that got me on that, starting to think that way, because it just got my brain going towards like, okay, so if this dude is taking the approach of just super high stable humidity and fresh water for them that's easily accessible, that's a key, has to be easily accessible water, for the size of the animal. Like if it's a pain for them to find it, that's a thing. Like if you only give them like a little tiny cup in the corner. Yeah. It's probably not going to work if you just kept them high humid. But taking that approach, keeping them really, really high humidity, we're talking 80-90% basically all the time, and never letting it dry out, and giving them access to that fresh water, and not training them to drink from the spraying. That's another key thing. Right. You're not training them to rely on those little tiny droplets. Instead, they're drinking the water out of the bowl, or if you're keeping them over water like I do, they're drinking out of the water on the floor of the tub. And they know they can find that wherever they're at any point in that enclosure. And I think the combination of that regular fresh water with the stable high humidity allows it to happen.
And my response really to all this whole topic is because I remember when we talked about this, that they were really young. Like they were probably like, I think they were like barely on their first or second meal. Like they were still really young, and
they're fragile then. Yeah, they're real fragile.
And I'm also thinking, like, even though, like, mind you, but I also remember keeping them over water, and I still dealt with like the wrinkled chondros, but not spraying the baby chondros without spraying them. But also too, like, I'm thinking this, like, even though I had a 6-ounce deli cup that's right there in the middle, easy for them to reach to if they wanted to drink, they don't know that they're maybe dehydrated that young. Like maybe they don't even know, like, hey, you should maybe go just take a sip of water, enough to even like put their head down. Because I got to tell you, like the ones I was like worried about not spraying, dude, I don't spray them every day now. Like I don't. I keep the paper pretty dry for the most part. Again, my ambient humidity's in the 60, mid 60s to 70 all the time.
That's in the room, right?
It's in the room, yeah.
But so then you factor in the cage, it's probably, or in their tubs, it's probably 80, 90, most of the time.
Right. But mind you, even when I had it like that, I was still getting them wrinkled. But I feel like because they were so fragile and young that they just didn't compute to like, you should probably go drink some water. So I'm thinking like there has to be a stage where spraying is necessary no matter how you look around it. Here's my thoughts on that would be this, because I've hatched, so my first clutch of chondros was in 2020, and I didn't spray them, but what I was doing the first probably 3 or 4 days, out of the eggs, I would just basically pour a little bit of water over their bodies, because they're kind of, most of them were, they were like in the tub together, so I'd basically just pour water over the clump of babies, as throughout the cage. But then
And I was doing that because I was nervous, because I'm like, you know, because that was basically when I first started trying the approach of minimal to no spraying whatsoever. And so after a few days of doing that, and I separated them out, put them into the individual tubs, they were over water. I was still nervous. I'm like, shit, you know, they're probably gonna not have a good shed, because you hear all the warnings about it. But I didn't have any issues with them. They were looking perfect. I'm like, okay, well, seems like they're doing good, so maybe I should just not spray them. Just let them do their thing, instead of starting this kind of habit of training them on this reliance on it. And they all had good, clean sheds. It's like, okay, they're looking good, they're looking fine, and they just kept looking fine. I kept being scared, and they just kept looking fine. It's like, all right, well, this seems to be working. And so I did it with the subsequent clutches, and then same thing with the emeralds. Just the emeralds, I will say, the first litter, I was nervous about them not having good sheds and everything too, because I'm like, well, it's a different species. Maybe this isn't, I need to be, you hear a lot of talk about emeralds are so absolutely reliant on water droplets, which I've, in my opinion, have proven beyond any shadow of a doubt is not the case. But I was still thinking that the first litter, and I was spraying them a little, like, every couple of days, something like this. And I remember I talked to Ed, just asking for advice on him, and he was like, don't do that too much. Don't spray them too much. Keep them, you back off a little bit. You want to spray them every couple of days, something like that is fine, but don't overdo it.
Right.
Again, because you're, for a number of reasons, you're creating too constant wet of a skin for them, which can lead to issues. You're creating too much stagnation and all these kind of problems that can arise from it. And also, I don't know if Ed agrees with this, so I definitely don't want to speak for him on this. I should ask him if he feels this way, actually. But I think that part of what you're doing there, when you start doing the constant spraying and especially right from birth like that, I think you're creating a reliance. You're training them that this is how they get water, and so then they don't know what to do when they're not getting it, and so then they can dry out pretty quickly. And the other thing too, that might be your issue, this is just, I don't know for sure, but I thought about it when you said, you're keeping them over water and you were still having problems. One difference might be the fact that you're keeping them in a rack, whereas I keep mine in tubs with lids. So the lid,
well,
you're probably getting more loss of humidity overall.
I'm not though. I'm not. I consider that because there's a shit ton of droplets from the top, like if there was a lid. So that's not the case.
Okay, so that might not be the issue. Then that
was I looked at that I was like, maybe it's just. But also, here's another thing though. I have been keeping my babies at 87 heat all the time. So
it's a little. So it's maybe a little too warm for them. I don't know. I don't
want to say it's too warm. I'm just saying that heat is what's drying it out. It's like,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like the whole almost like providing the basking not warm enough. I just feel like it's probably warm enough for them, but the way that back wall is cooking everything, that might be the issue to them wrinkling up. It's drying them out.
It could be, yeah. It's tough. I think that's one of the things that I wish I had a better solution for, but right now I don't. I think if you have the ability to do a separate baby room that you can do full ambient in, that would be ideal, and get it up warmer for them. But that's hard to do, and to keep everything, because I kind of feel like, well, I've never really been a big fan of using the heat tape or heat rope, or heat cable rather.
Yeah.
I feel like the animals, I don't know for sure, but just an observing mind, because mine are all kept in tubs with the juveniles and that I produced. They're all kept in tubs of different sizes with the lids on them and heavy ventilation holes around the tub. But I keep them in a Sterilite cabinet that's modified a little bit, that has heat on the back of it. Basically functions just like a rack, but it allows me to have different size tubs without requiring a rack that has exact shelf size for this. And I've always felt like the animals, they tend to stay away from that back heat, even when I've adjusted it. It seems like they just don't really love the way it feels. And I don't know if that also, maybe that can contribute to drying them out in some ways. I'm not really sure. But I'd be curious to try keeping all the babies fully ambient, closer to the same way I keep the adults, and seeing how they you know, how they've responded to that.
And mind you, dude, what's also been helping me tremendously is I don't run any heat panels. Like my heat panels aren't on. Yeah. I think they're on, but they're set to a very, very low temperature where my room gets warmer than my heat panels. So, and again, why am I having issues if I have enough water in there, if my ambient humidity is perfectly fine, why would they still be drying out? Has to be because of the heat. That's the only thing I'm thinking of. Like
heat is one, and then the only other thing would be like, you know, your specific water that you're using might have an impact. And I think you mentioned the other day, like
dude, here, sorry, buddy.
You changed it all, right?
Yeah, my water's been, dude, no prolapses, motherfuckers. That's my next
flex.
That's
badass. Yeah,
I know you guys are probably so sick of hearing me flex, but guess what? I'm not done. Okay, I'm gonna keep flexing as much as I fucking can if I want. And
you kicked the shit out of this year.
And I'm gonna keep. I have my foot on people's necks. I love it. But I'm gonna tell you this: the next thing I cannot wait to be happy about, knock on, is if I could get 67 baby chondros to be established with 0 prolapses. What the fuck? Say something.
Hell yeah.
Who else has done that? That's what I want to fucking know.
No, I know. Dude, you knocked it the fuck out of the park. Undoubtedly.
I have prolapse PTSD. Like every clutch I've ever had a prolapse until this year. You know what I mean? And so, which is a whole nother topic or a whole nother issue, I feel like, which we talked about on Tuesday.
Well, I think not totally unrelated, because I think it does probably tie in. I suspect, like anything else, there's not like a black and white reason for prolapse. I don't think it's what's up? Is it something screwing up?
No, yeah, I don't. Was that me? I don't know. You glitched. Say that again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Gus, I turned on my Marshall simulator. Sorry. Sorry, Marshall. I don't mean to make digs again. I made a fairly shitty comment in the other day about that. But I'll address that technical issue. I want to make a statement about that just for future guests and stuff in a minute. But
yeah.
So shit. What were we just talking about? The
prolapses, like maybe
prolapses. Yeah, like it's not a black and white thing. Just like, you know, a lot of stuff's not black and white. But I do think that probably more often than not, there's at least some cofactors with hydration and heat. Yeah, it has to be part of it. Like,
but when all those factors are covered, and you still get prolapses, because that was my thing. Like I had last year. Okay, last year, even though I had 100% hatch rate on my clutch from last year, I still got 3 prolapses in that clutch.
Yeah.
But then I realized what I did last year different than this year is I was soaking my rodents in tap water. Like the rodents, I was feeding them. And so like I was giving them filtered water on a regular basis, but I was also soaking their food in tap water and giving them tap water, which I feel like the whole water thing isn't a big deal maybe to all snakes, but you got to understand some snakes might have sensitive stomachs, and like some snakes might not be able to deal with that type of fucking tap water that you have. And I've been getting away with using tap water up into the baby part. And that's where
that's where you're more likely to see issues potentially for anybody out there, is just because it's a very tiny little fragile snake. So again, you know, what the water, that varies a lot, you know, as far as the quality. I'm sure there's some people that probably can use their tap water and not really have any issues. I feel like, you know, I've seen an improvement with my, because like I first, right off the bat with the babies of both species, I always used filtered, you know, purified water.
Yeah,
I've not used tap with them, but I was still using tap for the adults up until probably like a year or 2 years ago, something like this. I can't remember when exactly I switched, but I went ahead and just like, all right, I don't want to do it for the adults either, you know, because it was just easier to use tap for the adults because it's, you know, less work and, you know, just go fill it than to constantly have to refill these 5-gallon jugs at the store and shit. But so when I switched to that for the adults as well, you can see the improvement. You know, they're just overall a little bit, you know, better looking urates, a little bit better looking turds from them.
Dude,
everything just looks a little better. And I don't think we had particularly bad water quality. I think in some areas you really are doing a disservice using tap water. But you have to just base that on what you're seeing with the animal. You know what I mean? If you're not really seeing a lot of problems with it, then it's probably fine. I don't know enough about testing the water to be able to be like, okay, if you have this TDS level or whatever, then that means you can't use it. I don't really know about that.
I say don't even test it. Just use fucking filtered water. Like
I think that's overall the better way to go. Yeah, but if you are using tap and it's working and you don't think you're really having any problems, then it's probably okay. But I would say if you're having problems, if you have any chronic problems that might relate to hydration or, you know, could potentially relate to the water, then you may want to rethink or at least question, like, is the water okay? Is it actually as good as I think it is? Is it actually potentially causing an issue? Because maybe it is.
Yeah. Water is so important. Like we think about us humans. Like, dude, like you go so long without drinking water, you literally feel like you're dying. Like you feel you feel like shit. And you know, there's people out there who don't have the best eating habits, and they don't drink much water. But like, dude, like we gotta understand like how important water is to humans. It's the same fucking thing to animals. Like it's not different. You know what I mean? And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's something where, you know, as much as people just want to go on podcasts and listen or go research and get information, it's just not that straightforward, guys. It really isn't. You
got to take all this and use it as a guide.
Yeah, you got to
do your own experimentation.
You got to basically throw everything in that work. You got to throw everything in a big bucket and just pull out what works for you and just see like, okay, well, I'm not going to use that and just not use that. You know what I mean? And that takes years. It's not.
It does.
Ooh, it does, not easy, dude. It really isn't. This is why, like Chris, like, got so many people right now they're excited to get into green tree pythons and emeralds, and they're telling me like, man, in 3-4 years, I'm gonna be breeding the sickest shit. I'm like, really? Like, you already figured that, huh? Like, you husbandry is already good. Like, you already got that part down. Like, and I feel like you really should consider mastering the keeping side of these animals before you start putting these pipe dreams about being a breeder and having these cool animals, because dude, without the husbandry, man, yeah, you might get a little bit of here, a little bit of there, but it just ain't gonna work. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, and just focus on getting the animals, you know, doing right by the animals first and foremost, and getting that all dialed in. And then if you do that right, then, you know, with a little bit of time and patience, the breeding thing should work. You know, it should work out for you. And yeah, I mean, there's always that's always one of the things, you know, that's been there in this hobby particularly since the ball python stuff blew up, is there's always like the gold rush mentality. I mean, I've seen that for sure with the emeralds. You know, it's like I've you know, absolutely seen that kind of thing going, where they buy way too many of them way too fast, and they're thinking they're going to get, you know, 5 different albino mutations popping up the first year, and they're going to make $1 million. And it's like, I mean, focus on just enjoying the animals for what they are, learning to master them, and get it down solid, and then go from there. You know what I mean?
It was crazy because, like, I don't care what they say, but when they're all determined, like when they're very gung-ho about getting the right sex, dude, I get it. You want a female, okay? But, like, just fucking get the animal you like that you see and just see what happens. Like,
I think you got to build the stuff a little slower. I think, you know, with ball pythons, the situation is different. The formula for keeping them and breeding them, having success with that, was, you know, mostly sorted out, you know, years ago. And I know there's an argument about, like, you know, whether they should be kept that way and all this and that. But it's like, there's no denying that in terms of being able to provide for the basic needs for the animal, keep them healthy physically, keep them, you know, in good enough condition to where they're breeding and can reproduce and, you know, can be done at scale like this. Like, that was solved years ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, you know, evolution of those animals' care needs to stop, or that it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the perfect solution, but the core, you know, process there has been solved. We're not really quite there with the chondros and emeralds yet. We're probably getting closer to where we have a fairly solid, you know, understanding of what it's needed. But even with that, they're just not the same kind of animals.
Well, no, because, okay, we think about everything. What people think about is the timeline. Like, how soon can I get babies? Like, how soon can I breed? And ball pythons, there is a timeline in a sense. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, it's a little more formulaic.
You could get the sex you're looking for straight out the egg. And you could, in the most part, you get males to breed between 6 to 12 months. Okay. Like, if you know how to get that thing feeding. And then females on an average lay about 3 years, and you could actually go off that. You can't do that with chondros, and you can't do that with emeralds. Like,
no,
there's no telling. And also with emeralds, as you'll probably agree with me here, Chris, like, dude, maturity's on your side. Like, if you can wait longer, you're probably gonna get better results. I feel like
with the females in particular, you know what I mean. And everybody that's had success with them has said that. And that, I mean, that's one of the common threads that, like, again, why I've tried to tell people that reach out to me and inquire about emeralds, and there's always some people that clearly have a gold rush mentality with it, and others are just looking to build a little collection and go slow and do it right. Like, one of the things that I really tried to, like, take seriously was the advice of some of the great people that were doing it with emeralds, that all basically said, it's like, even if they keep things a little different and they do this or that a little different, one of the, like, very stark common thread pieces of advice from everybody was, like, be patient with this shit. Go slower than you'd like to, generally. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna want to, obviously, like, it's exciting, you're excited, so, like, it makes sense that you're excited and you want to go 1,000,000 miles per hour. Like, there's nothing wrong with, like, having that feeling of wanting to do it, but have the sense to realize that, like, you can't do that with these animals. You can't rush it the same way that people do it with certain other species. They're just not that way. And so that's the way I tried to approach it. And like, when I was building the collection of the northern adults, I didn't go out and buy 50 of them at once and try to throw them all together and get them, and hit the jackpot in a year. I'd buy one or two at a time and quarantine them for a fucking year and do it in multiple stages and, like, be careful and do it slow, and that's what you need to be doing.
That's a good point, Chris, because I'm sure, like, as much as I put myself out there, like, people might think I got this over the course of the last 2-3 years. I've been building this shit for 8 years, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
people do the same thing with me. They don't. It's like they think that they always think I have way more adults than I have.
Yeah.
With the emeralds, in particular the chondros, and they seem to think that it's like, it's just all overnight, basically. It's like,
buy a bunch and breed and see what happens.
No, it's like, no, that's like the classic thing that, like, all the guys in the past said, that they had tried that, understood and understandably tried, and it didn't work.
Well, let's think about
I took that to heart.
Well, let's think about the last individual who thought he could experiment buying a group of 40 imports and feeding it fruit-fed rats.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, I've seen it multiple times, and I'm still seeing it happening right now with people, where it's like, good luck with that. You know what I mean? It's a way to, and it's a way to run into disaster. And it's just like, you got to take that stuff seriously. You got to try to just go slow with it, quarantine as carefully as you possibly can, isolate things as much as you possibly can right from the start. Do it as long as you can. As long as you can do it, that's what you should do, so you can know if this animal is actually healthy or not.
And historically, there have been reptiles that are known to where you could gold rush mentality and be successful, in a sense. Like, it's still not recommended, but you could pull it off if it all works out. But and there you have people who haven't really tried that much with chondros and emeralds, but when they do, what happens, dude? Like, whenever somebody comes in with, like, the quick turnaround, I'm gonna dump all this money and get this group of animals, like, you don't really hear from these people much after that. Like, the whole, like, you hear about the initial group purchase, but what's the outcome? What happened?
It gets dumped.
It's never a pretty ending, dude. And if you're listening and you do have a pretty ending, please hit me up. I want to know about it. I want to know, and I want pictures.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time that's just it is what it is. I think there was a couple of things I wanted to bring up with the people are probably sick and tired of the spring bullshit by now, but maybe not. I don't know. I hope this is educational and informational for people. Like, and I by no means, like, the stuff there's one thing I say about anything that I'm putting out here. Like, if you have a legitimate challenge to anything that I'm saying, I want to hear it.
Yeah, me too.
But, like, what I don't want to hear, or what I'm kind of getting tired of, is, again, the
location.
I'm tired of chest puffing, where it's like, okay, like,
I live here.
Well, it's like, okay, well, like, if you've got results that are like let the results speak, basically. Like, if I've had this with people, again, like, I get people that will contact me asking about issues they're having, I'll try to explain them to them in a matter-of-fact way of like, well, this is what I think is happening. And one of the most common things is like, well, no, it can't be that because I don't, you know, my spraying is perfect, like my humidity is perfect, my temperature is perfect. It's like, okay, I'm confused. I thought
Why'd you come to me?
I thought you were coming to me for advice. I guess I'm coming to you for advice now. Like I'm, you know what I'm saying? It's just weird. It's like, well, what are you contacting me for? Like if you don't want to take what I'm saying, and again, I'm not saying this is the absolute fucking top gospel and you can't ever question any of this. By all means, do it. Challenge me on any of this shit.
Yeah.
But it's like if you're coming to me for this and you're asking me about these issues, you may want to take into consideration like what my results have been and whether this seems to be working. And so, if
and you know, it's almost
giving advice on that, maybe think about it and try some of it.
I think it also makes you look like mature as a keeper to be like, you know what, I was doing this and I figured out this works way better, and like you talk about it because that's kind of what feeds.
I mean, that's the only reason, dude. There's very little that I'm doing that is like a truly brand new original idea. Probably none of it is really. I would pick up little things from people. It's like, oh, that's a cool idea. That seems to be working well. Let me give it a try. And if it works, then, you know, I may do my little version of it. It's like a little tweak of that, you know. I mean, shit. Everything that I do with the emeralds is based super heavily on everything, all the amazing information that Ed has shared over the years, as most of us are. Because it's like this dude's been doing this shit, you know, since what, 84.
84.
I'm pretty sure he's learned a thing or two over the years. It might be worth listening to him. That's why I get real annoyed and I get sometimes kind of defensive when I see people that will say anything even remotely disparaging against Ed. And there's a few out there that say shit, whether it's a directly aggressive like somebody like you know, Donahan, or or passive aggressive stuff. You know, like, oh, he does, you know, they're not his pets or whatever. Like, it's like, dude, this guy has shared, this dude has probably, you know, helped way more people with these animals, with emeralds in particular, than anybody else in the past or probably anybody in the future anytime soon will. Like, give him more than props.
And
because he didn't have to do that. He could have been, Ed could have been a prick about it, and you know, he's always been real forthcoming and real helpful and always just, you know, pretty matter of fact and straightforward about stuff. And that brings me to, I listened to the episode, was it yesterday or what, Tuesday with Chuck, and he said something similar about, like, you know, like feeling that kind of obligation to help other people out based on the people that helped you.
Yeah, you
stuff, you know what I mean? Yeah, just help pass it down. I definitely feel that, like, I feel an obligation towards, like, you know, I wouldn't be able to keep the animals as successfully as I'm keeping them without, you know, guys like Ed.
Yeah, and I know more than a dozen people who've had like long conversations with Ed over the phone. Like Ed is the guy to
Ed's
where
got incredible patience, man.
I
don't have that level.
Bro. Yeah, no, Ed's the man, dude. I'll tell you,
yeah,
Ed's the man, bro.
Because there's sometimes where I see people post stuff and like Ed will still respond to it and take the time and help out, or he'll at least like be kind of nice about it. And I'm thinking, like, he's probably heard this. He's probably seen or heard this bullshit like it's got to be hundreds, if not thousands of times. It would be totally understandable to just be like, I don't want to hear that question ever again. Yeah. I don't want to ever address that ever again. Like it would totally be like reasonable to be like, okay, I think after the, you know, umpteenth time helping somebody on that, I think I get a pass. I don't need to chime in here, but he still takes the time to help out wherever I think he can. So it's like
he definitely has his threshold though. Like if
everybody
Nerd,
does, yeah, everybody does.
I sure do. If Nerd posts something outlandish, he'll fucking say something.
Sure he did, dude. Ed cracks me. Ed says some hilarious stuff, and I like. I need to give him a call. I haven't talked to him in quite a while, but I always laugh about some of the stuff he says, like the way he'll dog on some of, like, on patternless emeralds and even the anaconda face and stuff. I joke with him. I say it's secretly his favorite snake is like a, you know, the worst patternless emerald you can imagine. He made a comment, and it was just so funny the way that he worded it. Somebody posted, it was an old post on the Emerald forum, and it was like one of those half patternless northerns, right? It's It's like an import, half patternless northern.
That's not a thing, though.
Well, no, but no, this is like a kind of a thing. Like you'll see a phenotype where like half the body's patternless.
I know,
right?
but I heard you can't call them that. Like I heard that's like
no, it's not necessarily. I just don't know what else to call them.
I know,
like,
me neither. Because I remember posting that one day and I got ripped on Facebook. They're like, there's no such thing as a half patternless, and I'm like, oh.
No, yeah, I'm just describing the pattern, the way that the phenotype of this animal was half the body was patternless. I do think there may be something to that because I see similar with the anaconda phase, but well that's a whole different topic.
Maybe like a het patternless or something like that.
I don't know. I don't know yet. But it's the funny thing was just the way Ed responded because the person, and I'm sure they weren't. This wasn't the response they were hoping for, but it was so funny. They just said something like, "What is everybody's opinion on this?" And it was just like a half patternless import. And Ed said he put the first comment was like it would be a nice emerald for a blind person. and then he topped himself on, and then he followed up with another comment, said if it wasn't an import. And it was just hilarious the way that he worded it. But
holy shit.
Yeah, it was pretty epic. But anyways, I think there was some other things I wanted to talk about with this thing. Let's see, requiring.
Let's get the likes up.
Oh, let's see. Yeah. Oh, so one thing that I think would be interesting on the topic of the wild animals, and I don't know for sure if this is the case, but like with the wild snakes, the chondros and emeralds, and I'm sure probably tons of others. The whole issue of like the rain in the wild and their defecation, right? Like are they defecating? They're waiting for the rain and then they defecate because of that. But the idea was like, oh well, it washes it away and it keeps them from being found by predators. But then I kind of just like again that tendency that we all have to just kind of ape what you hear because it's like, okay, that's what people say, that seems to make sense on the surface, I'm not really going to question it much, that makes sense. But I thought more about that, and it's like, does that really make sense? Like, these animals would basically get away from their scent. They defecate off and drop it onto the ground, however far below them, and would just be done. Like they would just move on whenever they needed to defecate. It was kind of funny because I even saw a video the other day of an arboreal viper that was like just on a perch, or not on a perch, on a branch in the wild, and just dropped a deuce. It's not raining. It doesn't need that. And then I got thinking about it a little more critically. It's like, well, would that even be kind of counterproductive for them to do that? Because when they're mating, they seem to, I think anyways, they seem to use, the urates, and probably some of the times when they defecate, they're signaling, availability to each other. There's territorial cues and availability cues, I think, going on there. So if they were waiting for the rain to just wash all that away, that probably would be counterproductive.
Yeah.
Again, maybe I'm talking out of my ass. I don't know. If so, if anybody's got to, call me out on that or challenge it, I have no problem with that. I just wonder about some of those things, if they're really actually true.
And one thing I did want to mention too, after everything we just discussed, like in a sense, like as much as we always try to relate in the wild, these things aren't in the wild, dude. Like they're not.
No, they're not. Yeah,
they're really not. And no matter how much
we can't really come that close. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. And we will. And we got to think like the evolution of dogs, like a pet dog, where it all started as a fucking wolf. And how many goddamn pet dogs would make it in the wild? You know what I'm saying? Like it's just not going to work. And we've come a long ways to, give dogs the food that they get, the water that they get, the fucking living in beds and living in homes and shit like that. It's just. We also got to understand like these things just aren't in the wild anymore, and it's okay if we find other ways to keep them that aren't really kind of the way in the wild in a sense,
Yeah, I think I that's one of the things I think some of the like I have mixed feelings on a lot of the kind of naturalistic movement and the kind of new way of thinking that, because I do think a lot of it's overall good and probably mostly well intentioned, but some of the stuff I think the logic is just flawed or just not really fully thought out all the way, because the idea like animals will use whatever's available to them basically. Like anybody who's kept snakes long enough, or if you I don't really go herping anymore, but when we would go out catching snakes, like you find them in all sorts of weird unnatural places. Like one of the most common things people find snakes where they find them is under tin. There's no tin growing in the wild. You know what I mean? And also like certain behaviors that you see, we can get caught up you know, because it's like, okay, you see a very limited few examples of like a certain behavior of a particular species in the wild doing something, and it's easy to think like, oh, that's what they all do and they all require it, and that this is what they do all the time. And
yeah,
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think sometimes they do all sorts of behaviors, and they're always just doing what's necessary and using what's available to them in that moment and in that space.
Well, they adapt, right? Because that's
they have to. Yeah, they have to.
Yeah.
But they'll do all sorts of weird behaviors. One example I've thought of is like the overwhelming majority of the times when I've found black racers in the wild, you know, they're going between two bushes or something. You know, that's when I happen to see them. During the day, they're going between two bushes. They're usually not that high off the ground. Every now and again, they're a few feet off the ground. But most of the time when I've caught them or encountered them, they're not all that high off the ground. But I saw one time that was like a solid 20 or 30 feet above my head, curled, like just coiled up, resting, sleeping, like almost like a retic, you know, in the wild or something, like way up. And I was like, holy shit, I've never seen one up there. But it was just like one random thing I saw. It doesn't mean that like, okay, now they all must be able to do this at all times, or it's inhumane. Yeah. You know, if you're not giving the animal the ability to be 30 feet off the ground at all times, and it's like torture. That's just bullshit. You know what I mean? You should always be striving to do the best that you can for them, but also be realistic and not get caught up on certain ideas where it's like, you know, let's kind of keep things into the realm of reality, and also compare like how other things are, you know, how natural certain other behaviors that are going on in those situations are.
And also like, don't take it so personal if someone wants to do what the hell they're doing and not take your advice. Like, God,
sure,
go for it. Like you know, at the end of the day, like if they're coming to you and they don't want your advice, then there's that. Okay, why the fuck even come?
I don't mind that. The only thing that bothers me really is just that I don't like seeing. I see a fair amount and hear a fair amount of like passive aggressive stuff about like keeping emeralds in tubs, or keeping emeralds in, you know, or chondros in, you know, anything other than like a bioactive type of cage, and that kind of stuff that starts to irritate me, because it's like there's a, you know, and ironically I see comments within those circles and within those communities where they're like, I mean, I saw one time that was hilarious. It was like a comment where they were complaining about, you know, what was it? It was like complaining about the criticism of a naturalistic setup, which wasn't even really, they weren't even really getting criticized. It just basically had like a mild questions about it. And it was like, oh, you know, how dare, you know, somebody question, or this is like harassment, kind of bordering on harassment or something. And then they like proceeded to just say a bunch of disparaging things about people that keep their snakes in too basic of a setup or whatever. And it's like, aren't you doing like literally the exact thing that you're complaining about right now?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The victim people, like, it's kind of like,
it's like, okay, this is, you know, so that stuff gets a little that grates on me a bit.
Yeah,
but you know,
that's everywhere. That's like that. Yeah. There's those contradicting people fucking in every little thing you do in life, and it is crazy because, you know, it's almost they're finding a reason to be upset. Like they're just like, God damn it, you know what I mean? And like that's just like a lot of those people are just going through shit. You're better off just just keep it moving, you know?
Yeah, and as long as, I mean, everybody talks shit. We all do that. So like a certain amount of that's going to happen. It's really not a big deal, and it doesn't need to be like a big, you know, fight or a big like, oh, I can't speak.
It's definitely not that deep,
you know. Yeah, most of the time it's not that deep. It's just funny how the communities work with that kind of stuff.
But it's really never that deep. We're talking about reptiles.
Rarely, yeah. Like, rarely is it really like, that thing.
Yeah, but it's funny how people will sometimes take it there, and it's like, dude, relax. Like, it's fucking reptiles, dude. Like, we're like, calm down, you know. But mind you, too, we got to look at the individual who's creating a fuss. Like, probably something wrong with that individual, and they're, you know, we all got things that we go through in life. So that's I try not to judge, because I've had people like literally come back say, sorry how I came at you, blah blah blah, and it's like, all right, man, I get it. Like, I'm no one to judge you, because I have my days. Trust me, we all know.
Everybody has, and we've all said things that are out of line at certain points.
Yes,
dude, I've definitely. I mean, and believe me, some of the like meme shit, like there's ones I don't post because I'm right about, and I'm just like, all right, that's definitely not going to go over well. Let me just leave that one, because that, even if it's pretty damn funny, I'm just like, it's not worth the like the backlash that would create. But
it really isn't.
I think this. I will say it's been fun I've appreciated the going back and forth with you on that stuff, and then even a couple of other people have chimed in and started, and I think it's been fun. You know what I mean? It's been most of those things have just cracked me up.
Yeah, man, because at the end of the day, people want to be right, and if they're not right, they want to know why they're wrong, and it's good because this should draw awareness to anyone out there who's tired of having stuck sheds, because I was one of them, and also too, what really made me want to get my shit together was not having a successful emerald litter, and so you might find yourself in a position where no matter how much you don't want to fucking own up that your shit's off, something might go down where you're like, oh, okay, better do something now. And that was basically me. I hate to admit it, but I waited for the worst thing to happen for me to actually fix my husbandry. But also too, like, I just didn't know. Like, I didn't, sometimes it does take something bad to happen for you for the dots to connect.
Yeah, that's just the way we are. As humans, that's the way we are. Sometimes it's like you've gotta screw up multiple times. Like I said, I've had this. My attempts at maternal incubation with the chondros kept failing. I kept doing essentially the same thing multiple years in a row, and it kept failing. And it's like, all right, I hit the point where it's like, I'm tired of this failing, so I'm gonna try a different way when I have success, with a clutch next time. And really, probably if I had half a brain, I would stop trying maternal incubation altogether because it's got its challenges. But I do feel overall, like I do still feel that my core belief that ultimately it should be easy to do if you set it up correctly. I think I'll get there with it. I just have to correct some of the mistakes that I've been making in order to get there. But at the same time, dude, your results this year have definitely got me thinking like, well, shit. The way you've incubated those clutches, it's like, well, I would say that's a pretty damn good result, since it's like huge number of successfully hatched, thriving little babies. That kicks the shit out of the levels that I've done with that species so far. You know what I mean? That's worked really, really well. So obviously that, there's something to it. And so yeah, maybe I'll do a mix of both. If I have another year where I've got a few clutches, I'll try maternal and then be hitting you up and be like, yo, what's the scoop here? How does this work?
I mean, we already know there's a million different ways, and having a show like I do on a weekly basis, well, multiple shows on a weekly basis, you hear how much has worked for people and how much it hasn't, and like you just pick and choose what you want to fucking work with, and once you find something that works, which I feel like I have, don't switch it. That's it. Like, and if something isn't working after a while, go back to why isn't it working. Like, find out what it was. And I got to tell you, bro, this is my second year where I've had every fucking snake hatch out of the egg. And also, that's not something I'm used to. I'm used to losing half the clutch or something like that,
Well, it's very common. That's obviously there's still a lot of work for us all to do with kind of getting the chondro hatching thing down to a little more of a tight science. And there's and with the with those, you've got like two core ways to approach it from the get-go, which is you could either go with maternal or you can go with artificial. But then, of course, there's a bunch of different ways to try to get that working with both approaches, because maternal is, in theory, should be as simple as it gets. But the key there is you got to really get that environment dialed in for that female so that you don't have, problems that arise like I've had where the eggs end up getting too wet because it was too humid.
Yeah. I mean, that's why,
or it got too hot and she abandoned them or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you get problems like that no matter what you do. So you got to always trying to improve and don't change it if it's working well, but try to determine, is it actually working well, or do you just want to think that it is? Yeah, I've definitely been there where I want to think it's working well and it's not.
That's what I'm saying. And with my whole mentality of spraying, I thought it was working. Only because I thought like, well, that's what else is going to keep my humidity up? Not even thinking about the ambient. And so that's why it's feel like you just got to think a little deeper. Like, that's it. Like if there's something that you're coming across and you feel like it's right and it's not right, just think a little bit deeper on how you can make that right. And that goes down to feeding, establishing, husbandry, everything, man. Like there's so many things the whole realm of things.
Yeah, all of it. And, and just try. So like, one thing I wanted to bring up. So a couple people have asked before about this. Like, so it's like, okay, well, if you're not spraying, what can you do instead, right? So like, we'll talk about a few other procedures there that can help. So obviously, if I would say the ideal situation, which hardly any of us can really achieve this, even if you have a dedicated snake room, it's still hard to do. It's like, I think probably the best way to do it would be like to have a high enough stable ambient humidity that's in the 60, 70, well, probably more like 70, 80, 90% range, really. But also with the right airflow, which is where it always gets challenging. But try to get your baseline room's humidity, as good as you can get it. That's going to vary. Use the tools that you have at your disposal. Use, humidifiers. Use even just open. It wasn't. I think maybe he still does it. I think David Brahms was doing tanks of water, I believe.
Oh, no, he has a huge fish tank in his room.
Okay, so exactly.
Yeah,
so right,
that helps him out for sure.
Plants can help. Both in the cage or in the room. Use the different tools you may have at your disposal to get the room at a good of humidity as you can, and then start looking at and thinking about the individual cages, and then what tweaks can you do there. And I think, I do think it's a universal truth here that I posted a little joke reel earlier where I sampled Bill Hicks saying I'm making a judgment call here, but it happens to have the backing up of it being the truth. I do think it is a universal truth. There needs to be a baseline level of humidity that's high enough and stable enough for these animals to thrive off of, and then you can build from there. You can spray or not spray, and think can work out well either way.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, spraying should not be the number one solution to your humidity or your dry issues. There's other things you really need to look into.
I think so. The only exception I would say there is and this is again where you get into the topic of what's practical for your average person to do. So Dennis McNamara, right, at the zoo, they keep the basins, they rain on them for 20, 30 minutes every day, something like this, right?
30 minutes straight.
That's not practical for most people to do. So
but their fucking setup is huge.
Exactly. It's not the same setup as your average person, and I'm sure that also their humidity is on point. I guarantee you they're not keeping those dried out.
There's a draining system. I've been
I'm
there.
sure it's nice and humid and everything works in there. And so that's a way that you can do it. And again, if it's, I guess the ultimate kind of takeaway from this would just be if the approach that you're doing is actually working, no problems, but you need to go, okay, is this working? Again, I get that quote a lot. It's people, and it's almost always in a defensive way. It's I spray and it's working fine for me. And it's okay, but is it though? Is it actually working for you? If it is, cool, great, keep doing it. It's working. If it's not really quite working and you're having issues, then that's where you can start going, okay, well, maybe this doesn't frickin' work for me this way.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I had any other specific.
I was going to say, go ahead and
I could rant and rant, of course, but yeah, we should wrap it up.
Let's do a wrap-up topic. And if there's anything you also want to statement-wise say at the end of the episode, feel free to.
Yeah. Oh, one thing, I mean, we didn't really talk about it much, but I just moved to a new room, so that's got its own little challenges.
Oh, for sure.
With everything, that was a nervous situation. Moving gravid females and active breeding animals and everything. Yeah, it was a nightmare. Mostly in my head though. It went remarkably smooth, and hopefully everything will go off. Continue and go off without a hitch. But we'll see. The room's working essentially the same way I had the emeralds before. It's just a larger room, and it's
how far away did you move from your old place?
About 40 minutes. So and it was pretty much a straight shot. So it was not a lot of disturbance for them. It was very minimal disturbance for them. Did it at night, and it went quite smooth. The only issue I had is and it was funny because I thankfully found him. He probably was out for an hour or two. Is my male Jamaican. I had the first snake escape I've had since I got back into keeping in 2017. I haven't had a single escape of any snakes.
Yeah.
But I had my male Jamaican boa managed to squeeze out of the lid through the tub, and I found him sitting on a different tub, And I just happened, and I was like tired, and I just happened to glance over, and I noticed. I'm like, at first I thought it was just some random shit during the move that I just set on a tub, but I'm like, that didn't look right, and I like did a double take. I'm like, little bastards, the guy managed to get out and was sitting on top of a different tub, so I popped him back in. But that's pretty much the only hiccup I've had so far. So fingers crossed, everything goes good.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to see how that transition went because I know firsthand, like moving stuff. I only moved the way.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking.
And it's nerve-wracking, man. And also like getting this new room, like this room was nothing like my old trap at all.
Yeah.
So, and that took me a while to figure out and to adjust as well.
That's same thing here. So it's a different. So the old house was central AC, but this is individual units in the room, individual window units. So I'm having to adjust to that to try to get it fine tuned. But this building's better insulated, and so I actually get less humidity loss. And so I've had to adjust, getting that to where, like I said, I made adjustments with instead of dumping water on the pads, I don't do that at all for any of the adults because it would just be too much. And, I don't want to get mold buildup in the cages or anything like that. And so I've had to change that up and then just fine tuning how I have the AC running. I'm still tweaking and I'm still kind of like, fuck, is this getting a little, too warm or too cool? And, so that's been the biggest challenges here so far. I switched up. So like my adult chondros, I don't have any external heat for them anymore. I was before. I was still using an Ultratherm heat mat on the underside of the tubs to warm up one side, but it gets warm enough here ambient to where they're not going to need that. And I also switched my my Jamaican boas and my white lips out of V70 racks into, they're still in tubs, but they're in just standalone tubs, and I'm trying fully ambient with them as well. So no external heat at all for anything in the main room now, and it's a little nerve-wracking. But honestly, like after watching the way the chondros have done over the years, it's like they do so good at ambient that that's my preference. And the same thing with the emeralds. I wish I could do a separate baby room, and eventually I'll do that when we get into a different space. But right now I still have to keep them, in a little in cabinets with back heat, and I have less control over the room temperature and everything.
Yeah, man. When you don't have to worry about controlling heat so much, like, it's so much easier, man. But mind you, you need to have the right temperature. Like if you could get the right temp without having to put so much supplemental heat, man, those snakes appreciate it. They really do. They like it. They like if you can. And also with the humidity. Again, we mentioned temperature, but goddamn, the humidity is probably, I don't want to say it's more important. They go neck and neck. Like they're very important. Like they're two big things you got to have under control, I think.
Yeah, you do. And the humidity's, I think probably for most species it's got to be dialed in pretty close to, like, again, this isn't the wild, but we still have to try to base things off of what they have in the wild.
Right.
And so I think that generally, like I think a pretty safe general statement to make is that look at where whatever species you're keeping, where do they come from? What is the general baseline humidity levels? How much variation in there? And try to get that, ambient humidity in that range or as close to it as you can. Yeah. You're hardly ever going to be able to fully replicate it, but as close as you can, I think is going to be a big benefit to every species you keep. And that includes the ones that need to be dry. Yeah. I couldn't keep super dry stuff in this room anyways. If I kept species that needed to be really dry, I would have to isolate them in a different room and probably have to put in specific effort to dry them out more.
Yeah. I mean, that's what made me realize, like, I think I had the lace monitors at one point and had like these species that are way different temps needed versus what I had next to them. And that's another thing too, like you got to think like, what all do you have in your room that you're trying to work out here? Because you could have species that need completely different opposite husbandries, but yet they're right next to each other. You know what I mean? It's
tricky to pull that off. That's why I think a lot of people tend to just keep things, groups of species that work well in a general, because it's just it makes it so much easier to do. Yeah. But it would be cool if I had a big enough, multiple rooms and all this. I would probably, expand into some different stuff. I don't know exactly what I would really keep offhand because most of the stuff I like the most is all kind of generally in this tropical type of range as far as the requirements. But yeah,
I gotta say, I'm glad somebody said it, Chris. And I've been on your bumper, buddy. I'm trying to get you to sign this deal.
I know, man. I know. I may go with it at some point. It's.
What will you say for the record? Once you do a show, where's it going to be at?
It's going to be here. Yeah, it'll be here.
Thank you. That's all I need to know. No, dude. Honestly, you're a wealth of knowledge, man. And I know how you are. Like, if you have somebody on the show that gets your fucking brain moving, dude, you will drop a fire ass episode. I gotta tell you, dude, I get props every time I bring you on the show. People hit my DMs, tell me how much they love having you on the show, bro. Like,
thanks, man. I appreciate that.
You're definitely good for this. Only because your delivery, like your demeanor and your experience, everything just kind of fits together. And I feel like you're just really good at just putting information out there without, other than the memes, which that's what the spray Illuminati gets.
The meme is that's just different energy. Yeah, it's really ultimately at the end of the day for that stuff. I love I love sound and I love video and manipulating sound and video, and any reason I have to get creative and make some silly goofy bullshit like that, I jump on it. So if a dumb idea pops into my head, I feel compelled to execute it. Some of which are real stupid, and probably I shouldn't post some of them. But I just figure if people get a laugh out of it and they enjoy it, then so be it.
And it's a good episode if Ryan Young's dropping in calling you a bum at the very end. So okay, but again, any closing statements, man? This was a great episode, but what do we have to say to anyone out there who really enjoyed this episode and got a lot of info from it?
Hopefully the memes don't scare everybody off completely and put people off too much, and you kind of see through the silliness and the fun of it, and hopefully it gets people just thinking critically and taking something useful out of this. I try to be as clear as I can on stuff and be helpful throughout this. So if people are digging it and getting something out of it, then I really appreciate that, and I'll try to do more of that.
Who are you calling Rain Man right here? Was that me or
no? That was just it was just a stupid. It just popped in my head, like the concept of like this just that fake rain, because I say fake rain a lot, and it just popped in my head like fake Rain Man, and then I'm like, what an ass! And it just like I said, these ideas will pop in, and just the idea of like a man that's a savant that has like it's like the most useless skill. Is you can count stuck sheds instantly on any snake that you glance at. So it was like stewing in my head, and then I'm just like, fuck it, I'll take a couple of, I'll take an hour or two and overdub my voice and turn it into something, and just I like sampling shit from YouTube and turning it into some dumb thing. So
remember those like Coca-Cola bottle glasses from back in the day? Like,
yeah.
Somebody was literally counting those when they saw that meme, and they're like, hey.
Yeah, they're counting. Yeah. What the hell? No, so yeah, that wasn't intended. And again, I put on the post like I hope people didn't take that as like a derogatory thing towards anybody with neurodivergence or anything like that. Because I don't have an official diagnosis, but I don't think it's probably a stretch to say I got something going on in that general spectrum. But yeah, it's just a silly idea that I couldn't stop laughing at some of those things in my head, and so I was like, well, it'll be fun to try to execute on the idea.
It's gonna be fun to have you back on the show, man. It's always a pleasure. Where can people follow you at? I'm assuming Instagram's the best.
Yeah, pretty much just try Instagram is best. I'll do respond on Facebook every now and again. I kind of get hating it, like we all do. We're tending to hate it more and more as the years go by.
When are you gonna officially switch your fucking name from Snake Spirit to the?
The thing is that
herpetoculture. What is it?
It's Wakaiva herpetoculture, and I have I need to just do. The thing is, Instagram makes it kind of a pain in the ass to do this stuff because not just the verification, but you actually like any old posts that link to your account, like they don't have their platform set up in such a way to where it'll update. Yeah. So like you have to do some to keep your old links somewhat working, you basically have to set up pointers, so that if somebody clicks on something that's like at Snake Spirit, you need to be able to have that, they go to that account and then say, okay, well now go to my new one, Wakaiva herpetoculture, because you can't just have it update straight away. Yeah. It's just a pain in the ass way that they designed their platform. So honestly have just been kind of lazy about it. I haven't gotten around to it. I need to just get off my ass and do it.
All right. Well, Snake Spirit on IG, guys. Click on the link in the description. Go give him a follow if you're not, but it's a wrap. Give it up for Coach Rice, ladies and gentlemen. Great debate, Coach Rice.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, you win. You won. Later, bro. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Good night, man.
All right. Oh, gotta love Coach Rice. What a great episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, man, because don't let this information go over your heads, okay? Or don't let this information go over your head until something bad happens and you're like, oh, I better go back to that episode. Dude, fix this shit tonight or this weekend or something. If you are in that position and your husbandry is on the batter side of things, then fucking fix it, dude. Don't wait till breeding or don't do what I did. Like, let's go, man. These animals deserve the best you could give them. And I'm got to tell you right now, man, if you're keeping emerald tree boas and if you're keeping chondros, you better start thinking about that humidity, okay? Because it's very important, guys. I'm telling you right now. All right. And it's also a good place to be when you have a chondro or emerald collection that does not need soaking or any kind of assistance. You know what I mean? Good place. So awesome time. I will say, guys, next Thursday night, I will be at the mayor's house. That's right. Bill Stiegel's party is next week. I cannot wait. So many people flying in. Obviously, I'm one of them. So be ready for next Thursday night. It's going to be live and direct from Bill Stiegel's house. All right. Going to be quite the group there at that podcast. And we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. So tune in. And again, thank you so much for all the love and support. Before you guys leave, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed yet. Hit that notification bell, select all. Be a reminder of every podcast release out of the network 7 days a week. Shout out to all the sponsors. Please check out all my sponsors in the description below. Have a good night, and I'll catch you here next week. One of the biggest growths we have in the reptile industry today are the rare species of reptiles that aren't worked with. That's right. That's why I went ahead and partnered up again with Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. Brian works with species such as kahua geckos, gargoyle geckos, all species of tree monitors. He works with abronia and many other cool species geckos that you can check out all on his website. Head over to sundownreptiles.com, see what he has available. Brian's one of the best doing it in the reptile industry today. He's been on the show multiple times, so make sure you check out all of Brian Susan's episodes on Trap Talk Reptile Network. But more importantly, for the highest quality of captive bred reptiles, make sure you head over to sundownreptiles.com and make sure you give him a follow on Instagram. Thank you again, Brian Susan over at Sundown Reptiles. One of the things I love about being a part of the reptile industry is all the learning, okay? Learning can be fun, and I can prove that to you. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, Gary Scavino over at GS Reptiles. I highly recommend you head over to his YouTube channel, follow all this man's content when it comes to learning about rare species of snakes you could be keeping in the hobby, and also just finding out how easy a lot of these rare species of snakes are to keep in general. So thank you so much, Gary Scavino of GS Reptiles. Again, head over to his YouTube channel. Also head over to his Instagram to be on top of all of his current work and be ready for a big year over at GS Reptiles. Thank you so much, Gary, for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Cheers.